Hello, and welcome to I'm a Fan of That, a podcast about all things fandom, told through objects, stories, and studies, with a bit of silliness thrown in along the way. Your hosts on this journey are Dr. Vivian Asimos, public anthropologist and pop culture academic, and me, pop culture writer and journalist, all-round enthusiast, Olly Swinyard. Join us as we deep dive into the wonderful and wacky world of fan culture, its history, the people who make it up, and the way we look at this ever-growing part of our society. Fair warning, we may well talk about some adult themes, use some adult language, and possibly get a bit nerdy about the whole thing. You have been warned.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of I'm a Fan of That. I am Vivian Asimos, and as always I am joined by the lovely and wonderful and award nominated Olly Swinyard.
I am award nominated. It's lovely.
If you're not gonna milk it, I'll milk it for you.
Thanks. I should also be like, and also best-selling, because that happened. So yeah, I was the 5th best-selling book for my publisher last year. What that actually means in numbers, I don't know, but it's really nice to put on things.
Yeah.
Award nominated best-selling book. Hell yeah, let's go with it. And I can feel good about myself despite everything. And also, if anyone's watching the video of us, I apologise that I look like death. It's been 32 degrees in the UK for the last few weeks, it feels like, but no, I've barely slept, so...
For anybody who is listening, I do still have a fan on me. I think that my microphone cuts it out, but you never know, and I'm not gonna turn it off, so...
I did turn mine off because it does pick up my microphone, it's so loud, and I might regret that. So we'll see.
It doesn't look like it's picking up on the waveforms. I did check a couple of times before and then listened back and I didn't hear anything. But, I'm sure somebody's going to be like, oh, I found that droning noise really annoying.
They'll be talking about, like, our, vocal fry or whatever at some point. I'm like, who cares? Who cares?
I don't know whether I should remove this when we edit, but I got a comment on one of my video essays where somebody was like, I immediately turned off because this voice was annoying.
Oh, see, now you made me laugh like that. Like my freaking Jimmy Carr laugh. Like, Jesus.
Oh, which I just thought was funny. But anyway.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my god. I mean, to be fair, I have turned off video essays because people have been annoying, but it's almost always
because of my voice.
No, but it's actually because they use AI voices, and the moment I hear an AI voice in a video essay, I'm like, be gone! I would rather just have someone's voice. You know? And your voice is nice. I listen to you a lot, obviously.
Well, thank you. Today, we're not talking about my voice. We are talking about K-pop, and I was thinking about starting with, like, BlackPink in your area, but I then I was gonna do I'm a fan of that in your area, and I couldn't decide, so we just went with a traditional opening.
It's all right. They've had at some point they're going to be like, we've had enough weird openings this series to just want a normal one. So yeah, it's fine.
They've already been subjected to me singing Taylor Swift once. I won't have them do it with BlackPink.
Not gonna lie, I was amazed you didn't do it on the bonus episode, but
I might have thought about it, but I've also been listening to way too much Taylor Swift lately. That's a discussion for another time. Anyway, today we're talking about BlackPink, which is another weird musical obsession that I listen to way too much.
It's right. One day except we can't, because like the music I listen to way too much doesn't really have like a big fandom presence in the same way. So we can't even do that. Like that would be boring. Unless we talk about my obsession with Bo Burnham, which I don't know.
I think Bo Burnham has a pretty good fan base. He could be.
I just want to listen to the Jeff Bezos song on repeat. It just scratches an itch in my head.
I was watching an album reaction to Taylor Swift because this is my life now. The person that I was listening to actually compared one of the songs that she did to a Bo Burnham song.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I don't remember which one now. I'll have to rewatch it.
Bo Burnham is, to be fair, a lyrical genius, and we should all appreciate him much more than just a funny man on the internet, because he is great, and Inside is one of the best albums of all time. But don't listen to it on repeat during 2020, because you will go depressed really badly.
Who wasn't in that kind of a boat at that time?
2020 was a special time. Anyway, we're 5 years away from that now, so let's talk about K-pop.
Let's talk about K-pop, because K-pop is fun.
Yeah.
And I think I actually started listening to K-pop at around that point. I'm trying to remember exactly when. And I actually started with BlackPink, which I don't think is that unusual. I think a lot of people start with some of the bigger ones like BTS or BlackPink. I preferred BlackPink to BTS personally, not from any other kind of aesthetic, because there's some BTS stuff that I do really like, but I just prefer female voices in pop music. It's just what I like. I like cute girls dancing and looking at them and going, "Oh, they're so cute." It's my preference.
Again, I'm shocked of your interest in music. What? See, I don't. So I got introduced to K-pop, I want to say about 2016, 2017, but I didn't. I have not really listened to K-pop beyond like the kind of the big songs, you know.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, well, I mean, obviously I heard some K-pop before because there was obviously Gangnam Style that became a very meme popular hit in...
I think people forget, like, of course it's K-pop, but it doesn't fit the mold of what we know of...
I think because a lot of people think of the kind of group idol bands where you, like BTS, where you've got like 10 hot men dancing, like you're like, that's what you think of as K-pop, and not like a weird funny guy doing strange dances screaming at boobs and butts. Like, that's not what you think of as
I mean,
K-pop.
I still love it. It's still great.
It's amazing.
So what's kind of interesting is because I am a recovered weeaboo, I guess is the only way to describe it. I was into anime and manga and stuff as a teenager, and then kind of, a preteen, I would say, and into my teens, and then I moved away from it. I was really, at about the age of like 14, 13, was really into J-pop and like J-rock and stuff like that, and the idol culture in Japan. And the K-pop culture is very, as far as I can tell, it's quite similar. I think it's more organized, and I don't know which way it went, because I know that K-pop and the idol culture there is from like the 70s and 80s, and definitely was a massive thing in the 90s. So I don't know, probably not the 70s, but definitely the 80s and 90s. So I don't know if like that was exported to Japan and then Japan kind of copied it, or whether it was sort of both at the same time. That's something I'm not entirely clear on, but I do know that from my perspective as a little person living in the UK in the early noughties, that J-pop idols were like a massive thing. And people, like, there were people who wanted to be J-pop stars and stuff. Like, they wanted to go to Japan and do that as like a thing, because obviously that was plausible. Weirdly, it was for some people. Some people did do that.
Well, really, I mean, it's possible with K-pop. I think that's what's really interesting, like, about looking at...
Cat's the one that keeps popping up, is a K-pop band who aren't all Korean. I mean,
BlackPink isn't all Korean.
Oh, right, okay.
Like, Lisa is Thai, I think. Because she was in that White Lotus, and she spoke Thai. She actually is Thai, so...
Cat's Eye, I think, is the first K-pop band I came across who have a black member. But I may be wrong. K-pop stans, please tell me. Because it's you guys, the K-pop stans, who are kind of the reason K-pop has become the way it is, right? It wouldn't have sort of reached these heights of BTS being like number one in is it the US charts or something, like the first non-US band?
Yeah, probably. So just as a quick history thing, obviously music and origins are amorphous and combining, and you can probably trace any music to any point in time because of how everything loves to connect in human history. But the first like K-pop boy band, the way that we recognize it, was in the 90s, particularly in 1992. But yeah, we're talking a lot more about stans. Yes. I think what is interesting about fan culture is kind of how things have developed, because I don't think stans are inherently new with K-pop. No. Obviously, even the word doesn't come from K-pop.
No, it comes from Eminem.
It comes from Eminem. And the idea of it, obviously, like, we can look back on the history of a lot of music and see stan culture, even if it wasn't referred to as such, typically regarded and elevated to only teenage girls. Yes. However, I don't think those are the only people who were standing in these periods of time.
No, I think the Beatles is the obvious one. They kind of fit. They're the boy band, the screaming hysterical girls kind of images that's really burnt into people's brains. And funny now, because how many men in their 50s will tell you don't know music if you don't like the Beatles, as if they were the ones who were there. We'll have a whole discussion about how men co-opt the fandom spaces of teenage girls when it's cool to do so at some point, but not today, because I don't think that's what we're talking about. Yeah, the way that like the Beatles fandom, or fans, I guess we'll call them, in the 60s behaved was very Stan-like, what we would call Stans. The, you know, the thing of waiting for them at the airports and like when they got off the plane and all that kind of stuff, and just like, you know, fainting in the front row of the concert, all that kind of thing was like, that's Stan culture, very much so. And I think it's hard to say that that's not something that, like you said, we do associate more with teenage girls. And I think that's partially to do with being a teenage girl. That sounds silly, but like the whole thing of hormones and bodies changing and stage of life and all that kind of thing, and I think it kind of is, you know, that extremity of feeling is almost part of that. I don't think it's exclusive to teenage girls. I think teenage boys are like that too. It's just we see the image of it is teenage girls.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a very sexist society kind of tied into that of not allowing boys to express their joy. Yeah. Unhindered joy is something that men should be able to express, and teenage boys should be able to express firmly.
Go and scream at your favourites.
Yeah.
No, don't
not us.
From a safe distance behind a barrier, you know.
But also the idea of teenage girls and women in particular being hysterical, being unable to control their emotions is something that is heavily present in these kinds of discussions as well. So it's kind of both sides as being inherently problematic.
Yeah. What do you mean? The way that teenage girls are treated about things they like is problematic.
And I find this really fascinating because whenever we talk about stan culture, I think it often is connected inherently with talking about very young people and particularly female people. And I find this really fascinating because it ends up kind of connecting weirdly. Before we started on recording this episode, I was telling Holly about there was a comment on one of our videos that was about Taylor Swift, and it was a comment about how they believed that everyone who listens to Taylor Swift is either stupid or a teenage girl. And I came in, the stupid one, I can argue it, but someone like that, they're not going to listen to me. So instead, I use demographic argument, which is that if we look at the Eras Tour in particular, because those are the demographics I had readily available to me, only 5% of the people attending the Eras Tour were under the age of 18. The vast majority of the people who went were in their late 20s, early 30s. And a lot of that is because of, you know, Taylor Swift didn't just start out now. And what is really interesting is that we think of Taylor Swift fans as being teenagers because a lot of them were when she first started, but they stuck with her, and that was like 15 to 20 years ago. And so that time has ticked on. And while there are new fans that are young, there's a lot of the same people. Yeah. And I think there is this kind of weird assumption with certain stan cultures that therefore it has to be teenage girls. And so I was looking up the demographics for K-pop fans out of curiosity. And there is over half typically identify as female. I don't know, unfortunately, this is from the VNA, just to cite my sources. I'll include the link for it in the description below because it's an article that was accompanying one of their exhibitions back in 2023, so it's also a couple of years old now. But they don't cite where they got this from, and I couldn't find anything definitive other than a survey taken on Reddit for K-pop fans well, which
the well-known academic website Reddit,
which it being relegated only to Reddit will also skew things because it's going to be only people who use Reddit as well. But in the Reddit one, it was also I think just over half female. It was like 51% or something like that. And they both had, both the Reddit one and the VNA have the average age as about 23. I think Reddit had it between 23 and 27 as being the largest age demographic. So again, I think there's that assumption that the screaming crazy stans for BTS, for BlackPink, for any of these K-pop groups would be a teenager, but it is I mean, and also 51% is not like a massive majority for female.
That's about half and half, you know.
Yeah, so it's about half and half of 20-year-olds.
Yeah. Which, particularly I would be really interested to see those numbers taken from inside South Korea as well. Because, like, there's going to be a slight difference in a Western audience and a Korean audience, because idol culture is incredibly popular in Korea. Obviously, they have a whole industry for it, and it is, you know, they're a major export. But, well, no, it's a major musical export. You know, I would be really interested to see if that demographic is also 50-50 in Korea, because I think the likelihood is it is. Like, a lot of men in Korea like idol culture. Why wouldn't you? Pretty girls singing songs and dancing on a stage, of course you're gonna like that, you know.
Who doesn't like that?
I mean, pretty boys dancing on a stage also, you know, everybody likes that.
I don't know. That
pretty people dancing on a stage. What?
Pretty boys just don't do it for me the way that pretty girls do.
I think there should be idol culture for, like, bears, you know, like really big, buff, hairy guys. I think that would have an audience.
Those are just strippers.
But they're not singing.
I think that's Thunder Down Under, and you can go check that out. I can send you some links, Holly, if you really want them.
Is that, sorry, am I getting confused? Is that WWE kind of vibe? That's what that is. It's actually, I forgot that exists, and it's just wrestling. But yeah, I would be interested to see if particularly the Reddit one must be international, because it's Reddit. VNA, give us your sources. If it's Reddit, I'm concerned. Yeah,
so I would love to have a more detailed look, but I mean, granted, I didn't spend, like, you know, days on this research, but I did find it interesting that the VNA one was the first one that popped up, and also didn't have any link to where they got that number from, which is always a question mark for me. But because they do just say that that's the average age of fans, but they don't say whether that's global or whether that's Western. But they do spend a lot of time talking about more global aspects of K-pop, but then the VNA are based in London, so they're going to be, I think, a lot more focused in their discussion on particularly England and more Western stuff in general, because that's the people that are going there are going to be from that background. So I don't know whether they meant those ones either. It'd be interesting to know. If you wrote this as part of the VNA, hit me up. I'd be interested to know.
One of the other things I find quite interesting about K-pop, which I think that maybe other stan cultures haven't had in the same way. We've kind of discussed the thing of the way that teenage girls are treated, but there is this idea that in whatever teenage girls like is inherently uncool, because people hate teenage girls, right? We know this. We were both teenage girls at some point, and it's crap. But yeah, society as a whole deems the things that teenage girls like as uncool. I mean, think about the way that things like Twilight are treated and stuff like that. Even weirdly, books like The Hunger Games, which are now like massively critically acclaimed and loved, at the time they came out, they were kind of disregarded as just books for teenage girls. Like, there wasn't the same kind of discussion around them as there is now. I think that K-pop, and I don't know why, particularly couldn't put my finger on it, doesn't seem to have got that tarred with that same brush of this is uncool. And it may just be that the music is so fun and you know, good and exciting that it's sort of transcended out of that teenage girl space, other than for the stan culture. So like, you can be a kind of casual fan of K-pop without it being, you know, and you can kind of go, oh yeah, I just really like their music, and people go, oh yeah, okay, cool. But it doesn't seem to have that same thing of this is for teenage girls and therefore I must not like it. I mean, we've just, like, we were talking about this before we started recording, there's just been a film on Netflix, K-pop Demon Hunters, that is doing numbers everywhere. Like, I've seen it all over my social media, and of course that's slightly skewed because it's my social media, but like, people from loads and loads of different demographics, I mean, it was popping up
on my YouTube algorithm and stuff like that too, so
it's been, you know, it's being very well received. The music in it is amazing. And K-pop music in general is really good. I just realized that saying that it was popping up on my YouTube algorithm is not in any way demonstrating that it's different, because I have already talked about how much I already listen to this stuff and have been watching Taylor Swift video essays. So, you know. I'm shocked. I feel like we come at it from slightly different angles of this algorithm. But I think it's interesting that it doesn't seem to have gained that same reputation. And that may be to do with the way that social media works now. And so it's harder to be like, that's a teenage girl thing, don't like it. Or if it's that K-pop has sort of transcended that space a little bit.
The rise, at least in the West, for K-pop was kind of around, I would say 2018 upwards. I'm sure other people would be like, this thing was around before. I know.
We know.
Gangnam Style came out in 2012. I'm aware. But I'm saying, like, I think the way that we see it now was starting at around that time period and how big it has become. And we know that there's been a lot of crazy world events that have happened since about that time onward. And what has been really fascinating is what the social media landscape with the K-pop stans has done in kind of protests to a lot of these things. And I don't know whether that activity has coincided with its rise enough to make people take it a little bit more seriously, despite the fact that a lot of these people were teenage girls.
Yeah, I do think, because you had in 2016, no, it will have been after that. It will have one of Donald Trump's rallies.
Yes, I was going to bring this up.
Yeah, I love this. It's one of my favorite stories.
It was in 2020 that it happened. He tried to do a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and a load of K-pop stans bought the tickets in mass and then didn't show up in order to make it so that way basically there were like 19,000 empty seats at this rally. There is a quote here from The Guardian that somebody got just to help you do this. Trump has been actively trying to disenfranchise millions of Americans in so many ways, and to me, this was the protest I was able to perform. That was said by Erin Hoffman, who's an 18-year-old in New York. Yeah. So I think that it is, she added that she reserved 2 tickets and then persuaded a parent to book 2 more. So this is, it's a teenage girl. We're talking about teenage girl, but has been partaking in this protest through her stan culture and making valuable change and making a really huge statement politically that is at the same time. And I wonder if these kinds of things meant that people were taking them a little bit more seriously. Yeah. In a way that if they weren't doing these things, would that have impacted their view?
What I find interesting is comparing that to the Swifties who created I think it was Swifties for Kamala campaign. That was widely, and I mean predominantly through the right-wing press, that was made fun of. That was sort of, it was like, oh my goodness, the Swifties. And it's interesting that because there are these people that you talked about who still see Taylor Swift fans as silly teenage girls, the idea of them having political agency seems to be something that is easily made fun of and particularly useful for right-wing media personalities to kind of go, oh, look how silly that is, even though they're doing the same, if not more, organization than these K-pop stans did in this moment. Like, they did a lot of work. Both groups did a lot of work. I'm not going to say one was more than the other, actually. But, like, it's interesting that maybe it's to do with Taylor Swift being who she is and the media personality that she is and the pop culture personality, whereas K-pop is more nebulous, so you can't pin it in the same way.
Well, and K-pop is bigger in a way because it wasn't just say BTS stans and nobody else was doing this. It was like the entire, because a lot of it was in reaction to the treatment of Asian Americans. So there was a uniting factor, I think, to them in responding to Asian hate at the time, and still continues. I shouldn't say that it was only at the time. I think the hashtag for K-pop, what is the hashtag for it? Anyway, it's one of the K-pop Twitter hashtags at the time.
Not ARMY, is it?
That's specifically BTS.
Oh, right, okay.
Had 7.8 billion tweets and engagements with it, which is like the population of the world. So you get like you get like a huge number of people in a way that I think Swifties are kind of, it would be like if it was only BTS or if it was only BlackPink. That was kind of the center of it. So I don't think it's A, as big, and B, as much as Taylor Swift does do some political activity, I don't think she kind of mobilizes, I guess, in the right way. And I don't think the K-pop idols were mobilizing is the thing. No. Like, it wasn't like BlackPink was telling people to do this. I think it was just that the fandom was doing it. And I think that's what's really fascinating, is it wasn't perpetuated by an idol saying, hey, you know what we should do is we should fuck with Donald Trump and this is how we're going to do it. It was that the fan base did it, and then they heard about the other people in the fan base doing it, and they were like, I'm going to do that too. And And that's what did it. And it's so fascinating that it wasn't mobilized by the idol, as much as people like to think of stans as being kind of only moving when the idol tells them to.
Yeah. And I think as well it's quite interesting because to a greater lesser extent, like, K-pop idols aren't necessarily going to be that up on American politics or what's going on there. So that was these people who are joined together by a love of something, using that community to influence stuff in their own country, rather than, you know, so it's kind of like them being a group was more important than the, you know, the borderlines or anything like that. So it's not I guess it's a very different setup. But I am also interested by the fact that it still didn't get the same kind of, and I may be wrong because I quite like to go back and look at this, but it does seem like the kind of thing that the current iteration of internet alt-right personalities would absolutely have gone.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, but it may to be to do with time period more than anything else.
I tried to avoid looking at alt-right media, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm
Fair
not
enough.
positive, but especially in 2020, I was avoiding that thing like the plague, literally. And so I wasn't aware of whether or not there was, but I'm sure there was at least somebody somewhere kind of poo-pooing this idea. But I think that the problem is that there was actual, like, you couldn't say that they weren't doing something. Like, they weren't buying these tickets and then being like, I don't know, still letting people show up, or they're showing up, and then in some ways that doesn't quite still work even if they're doing it in protest. It's the fact that there's just empty seats is so much more powerful than like something, you know what I mean? I think that they were able to, there was real kind of result at the end. This also happened with the White Lives Matter hashtag. So during, again, similar time period, the White Lives Matter hashtag started coming up because, you know,
Big eye roll.
as a reaction to people trying to stop racism. So that hashtag started getting used, and so a lot of K-pop fans started flooding the hashtag with anti-racist messages and videos and posts, and they also did videos of their favorite K-pop stars, and they basically made that hashtag unusable by simply using it. And I think it's really because you wouldn't think also that like buying tickets to Donald Trump's rally would be helpful because you're like giving him money, but you're doing more than that in the sense that you're taking away the power of being able to see an image of him with loads of people in front of him. You're instead of doing an image with him with a load of empty seats, which is way more powerful. In the same way of, even though you're using the hashtag White Lives Matter, you're making it essentially unusable by flooding it with stuff that is also contrary to what that hashtag is supposed to be about.
I think the way that K-pop stans work is quite interesting as well, because they don't necessarily have they're obviously going to concerts and stuff, but they don't have like a central base kind of thing. They are very internet based. They are very the stans work through the internet. They work through things like, I don't know if they're still as big a presence on Twitter as it used to be now that it's not really Twitter
the
anymore.
Entity formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. Or whether they've moved to Reddit, but even Reddit is kind of dying a death. So I don't know. I think they're probably mostly on TikTok now. It seems to be where a lot of people have gone. But I wonder, because of that fact of being centralized through the internet rather than having conventions and meets and things like that, and being such a huge thing of, if you're a K-pop stan, you could be BTS or BlackPink or, you know, any of these bands. You can pick your favorite, kind of as it were, but you are part of K-pop as a whole. Whether that is more, I don't want to say nebulous because that's not what I mean. I mean like, there's a more kind of general connection to a lot more people than just being like, I'm on the Taylor Swift Discord.
Yeah, it's almost like
whatever.
An umbrella that doesn't really exist in other. I mean, I'm sure it exists in some music genres, but it's not very common. Where it's not like you're a Swiftie, but also a big fan of like, well, I'm a girly pop, like. Yeah. And I don't know how much of that is because, I don't know, like things aren't as connected in that way. We were talking a little bit before this started about how I was listening to a separate podcast of people analyzing Dua Lipa and how Dua Lipa doesn't have stans, and how they were kind of questioning whether or not she had stans and really diving into that, and also whether or not that has impacted her place in pop culture and her engagement with music and the way that people connect to her. Their theory was that because she doesn't put out music, that is, she's made a statement saying that she's not putting out any music that's like inherently connected to her personal life, if that has stopped her from getting stans. But I think that the stans in kind of Western pop music is disenfranchised in that sense. Like, you're not like, you don't say, oh, well, I'm a big fan of pop music and therefore that covers these kinds of things. It's you're kind of, well, I'm a Taylor Swift fan, or you're a
Swiftie, or you're in the Beehive, or you're a Little Monster, or whatever. You're in these groups for one sort of, I don't want to say figurehead, I guess figurehead.
It's an idol. It's just an idol,
yeah. You know. Whereas I think, particularly from an outside perspective of my friends, I have lots of friends who are into K-pop, whereas they will say that they're a K-pop stan. They won't necessarily say, they'll be like, these are my favourite bands. A lot of them are very into BTS. I mean, I think BTS is like the big one. And they're very into like them, but they're also into lots of other ones that I've never heard of, which is cool. They kind of influence me every so often to go and listen to something, and I'm like, this is great. K-pop is great, by the way. Lots of it's really good.
Yeah, we're not talking a lot about K-pop itself right now.
No, but it is good. I think it's kind of more akin to what I would say like metalheads and stuff. Like, a lot of people who come under things like metalhead or punk are more like K-pop, which is kind of interesting. So there's that slight I don't want to say disenfranchisement, because that's not what I mean. Again, I mean like slightly outside of the status quo, that, which sounds weird because K-pop is clearly a massive industry, whereas like punk and metal aren't. But,
well, unless you're baby metal.
But do you know what I mean? That thing of like, particularly I guess for Westerners, that K-pop is slightly, or at least it was unusual and all that kind of stuff. And I'm wondering whether it kind of comes out of that it does to me feel more like when my friends who describe themselves as metalheads are like, I like all of these bands. I love metal. They're not just following one band. They are into the genre. And it's kind of feels closer to that than your Swifties or Beehive or whatever group mentality of stans. I don't know. Sorry. Just kind of felt, thinking about it, they do feel more akin to those almost like sort of movements that have a subcultural element to them. Obviously, like punk and metal and stuff are a subculture as much as they are a group of people who love like music. And I wonder if K-pop is more like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could see the argument being made, because there's a lot of emphasis on a lot more than just music when it comes to K-pop. Like, the fashion becomes a really important discussion, and not just in fandom, like what you wear, but it's like the idols themselves and you styling off of. It's one of the reasons why I really liked BlackPink, is I got a sense of like each person's personality based off of their outfits all the time. And you could kind of see an outfit outside, like a disembodied outfit, and you'd be like, oh, Lisa would probably wear that one versus, you know. So you would kind of get this idea of personality based off of costuming, but yet they would also all be very similar at the same time. But I mean,
you could compare that to things like what, Kiss or Ghost,
it's like
the most recent,
like in the way that metal, I think, has costuming as a really important element of its styling as music. And punk has a very important styling as music, where I think pop can, but not really, not quite. No. It's all kind of a bubblegum painting, but even then that started to really break apart with pop, and I think that's a discussion for another time.
Because obviously at that point you have to start looking at people like Chappell Roan and Sabrina Carpenter, and
I think this is a discussion.
We should talk about Chappell Roan at some point.
We're going to probably have a discussion at some point about pop princess, and
I want to talk about Britney Spears.
Yes, I think we need to talk about the development of pop and women in pop in particular, because I think things have changed drastically in the last 5 to 10 years. But that's a discussion for another time. But I think that the change in the pop landscape in the Western sphere has, I think, almost led to the rise of K-pop. We didn't really have just fun, chill music. Like, I think one of the things that really drew me to BlackPink when I was listening to it was that it was just fun. Like, there wasn't anything else to it. It wasn't deeper. I didn't need to dissect it. I didn't need to, like, dig into it. I didn't need to think too hard about it because it's not even in English. I could just like vibe, and you know, one of my favorite songs is doo 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 doo. That's literally like, that's not in any language, and it's just, and yeah, sure, it's stupid, like in the sense that it's not like, I don't know, it's not making a grand statement on politics, but it's still it's just fun. It's just fun and lighthearted, and sometimes it's what you need.
Quite a lot of the K-pop music I've listened to reminds me of sort of the music of the 70s and 80s pop in the UK and America. So things like Duran Duran and ABBA and stuff like that, where you're kind of a bit more, they're just fun pop songs.
Yeah.
And that's not to say I feel like you can have fun pop music and music that says something alongside each other. Very, like, these are not opposite things. They run very happily alongside each other, and they can also be the same thing. Like, music is obviously saying something. But you're also allowed to have just fun music that's being fun.
Yeah,
like,
I think
fine.
that's it. Is I think that particularly, I think because of the status of the world, a lot of pop music has been leaning into saying something, which is in many ways a good thing, because it's taking stances and it's trying to change things, it's trying to say something. But at the same time, you just want to sometimes just put on a fun song of cute girls dancing and going doo 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 and tune out for like 2 minutes. And there is something really nice about that.
We talk about the music a bit because we haven't really, and I think that is part of why it has become as popular as it is. Isn't just because it's fun, but the way that K-pop is put together is so unusual compared to like the music of pop that we're used to, I would say, is because it changes genre halfway through. You'll go from like what you're expecting to be a very poppy, upbeat kind of almost sort of 90s pop song into a rap verse that could be out of like, you know, noughties hip hop, into like there's suddenly like rock guitars in the background, and it can all be in the same song, and they move around really fast, and it just works. But it's very dynamic, and so it doesn't feel like it doesn't work together. It doesn't feel like disjointed or anything. Like, it is, that's how it works, and that's what it does. And it's really clever the way the music works, and actually the whole presentation, the whole performance is part of it. K-pop isn't just the music, it's the music video, it's the dancing, it's the outfits, it's which person got which lines in which song, all that kind of stuff. Like, there's all of these things are really heavily considered. You'll have like, this person is the major dancer in the group, so they don't sing so much, but they'll lead the dance. And you'll have like, this person is the rap artist and all that kind of thing. They're given roles in this kind of way that like boy bands like Westlife kind of were, but not so much. You know, it's even more extreme than that.
Yeah,
you'll have,
it's like extreme Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, this is your character that you're being. I think there's even things like when the idol, they kind of become idols, or they go through idol school or whatever it is, that there's literally a whole kind of conveyor belt kind of thing. They're not meant to have relationships and things until they're out of their contracts and stuff like that, because that takes away from the idleness of it. It's quite an interesting and in some ways slightly terrifying.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we could talk about the industry around it and how kind of predatory and
there's a lot of problems
questionable
with it,
a lot of it is, which I think would be like a whole detailed study in and of itself. But we are aware that this is kind of questionable. But I think there is something really interesting about the way that they see the music as just one part of a larger whole. When you start watching like BlackPink and getting into it, for example, your algorithm will start showing you the dance videos. And it's just them, they're not singing in it. It's them dancing to their track. And it's showing, they're just wearing sweats, and cute sweats, but they're wearing their sweats, and they're showing the dance that is then like the dance for this song. And it's the one that you see in the music video, and you also see when they're on stage performing it. It's like, that's the dance. And it's very choreographed, but it's part of it. And it feeds into this kind of TikTok culture, right? Because then, you know, if I was into dancing, I could learn the dance and then do it and film it and put it up, and then people go, oh, I also like that, and partake in this kind of thing, because that's part of it.
It's almost like they've broken down every element of how to market to stans in this kind. It's almost perfect, because even you talk about the videos of them doing the dancing. I've seen that, and the sweats are cute, but the sweats are styled to that person's style. Yeah. So it's not even just like, this is like, it's so perfected for these videos. Like, it's meant to be like, here's a behind the scenes of them learning the dance, but very clearly it's not styled to be, this is your look. So you'll have the one who's kind of the rapper one, wearing like a big baggy t-shirt, like coming, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's very clearly styles. And I mean, there's also a whole conversation around how K-pop does co-opt Black culture in that regard as well. But again, I think we'd need a whole episode to talk about that.
Well, we could have an entire series on which cultures have co-opted Black culture.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
This episode, we're talking about drag.
Yeah. But yeah, it's very interesting to see the marketing of how K-pop is put together as like, we're going to give you this thing so you can learn the dance and you're going to do this, but we're still preserving the image. And it's so manufactured that that's almost part of the standing, is to be partaking in that level of manufacturing. That sounds really weird, but like the marketing revolves around all of that. It's not like when Sabrina Carpenter, I mean, obviously she's just caused a load of controversy and we could talk about that, but
oh god, we should do an episode on that.
Yeah, we should. She's just put out a new album and there's all the marketing around it, and there has been controversy around it, but you know, when she puts out an album, she isn't necessarily thinking about, okay, cool, I'm going to put out a video of a dance routine with me doing this. And she's got a very, you know, that's not necessarily how things are done in pop princess land. But it is how it's that, like, so when a K-pop song comes out, there's the video drop, and then there's the dance video drop, and then there's we're going to show this particular member doing their bit of the dance, so you can learn that bit if you like them best, or whatever, you know. So, like, it's very interesting quite how much marketing goes out around that kind, like every element of it, not just the song, not just the music video, but like the dance, learning the lyrics. Here's a live performance that also has been filmed professionally, all that kind of stuff. It's layer upon layer upon layer. And I'm not saying that other musicians and pop music doesn't do this, it just doesn't do it to the same degree, to the same amount of like all of this. And like they'll release like photographic like postcards and stuff for the new single, and there'll be ones you can collect, and they'll be like, it's almost like Pokemon cards, there'll be like slightly different ones and stuff, to be like, this one is looking in that direction and this one has a slightly different hand pose or whatever, and they're like, people trade them and sell them and stuff, which is quite interesting, and they go along with the albums and the videos and things, which is quite, you know, there's a lot of marketing aimed at fans, you know, it's not just buy the album, it's buy everything, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think is very specific to idol culture.
Yeah, material culture and marketing is a really important aspect of this. And I don't know if it feeds back into what you're saying about how there's not really... I mean, there are concerts, but not as readily available, particularly for Western audiences. They're not as constant, and so where do you go in order to meet people like you is you wear a BTS shirt, or you have, there's a YouTuber that I watch who has nothing to do with BTS or music or anything. She does like DIYs and home renos and stuff like that, but in one of her videos she was talking, and in the background she had a BTS poster, and all of the comments on that video was about how amazing it was that she also liked BTS. It wasn't it was just in the background, but that's how you advertise, that's how you find your people, that's how you find your community, is by having the poster up, by having the sticker on your laptop, so when you go into the library you have that there to signal. It's the thing that a lot of fan groups do. We've talked about it multiple times on here before, but it is somehow again, it's the same thing but to a just much higher extent.
But I do think that's it. It's like, you know, in fan culture, we do have these things of signaling to each other, I'm wearing this shirt, you've got the poster, all that kind of stuff. But I think it's almost like everything's dialed up to 11, you know? Bring in a Spinal Tap reference, why don't I? K-pop seems to take everything about fan culture and turn it up, and therefore it becomes stan culture. And that I do know, and I would say that and, you know, there's a level of casual K-popness to my life. Like, I don't really know the bands. I just like them when they're on the radio or when they come up on my Spotify or whatever music of choice. You know, they do come up. And I really enjoyed K-pop Demon Hunters. It was great. I downloaded the album instantly. It's really fun. But, like, I'm not in that. So I'm wondering how easy it is to be a casual fan of K-pop as opposed to falling into the stanness of it, because that's what everybody is doing. I don't know. I'd be really interested to hear, like, from people whether you could, like, whether you do get pulled into at least a level of that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so my experience has been, a level of difficulty with it. But I think because I'm also not someone that engages very readily online in general, it's a very big problem for trying to market yourself online that you when you don't really engage back. And so it's something that I'm struggling with. But when I was starting to get into BlackPink, there was kind of this level of like, oh, this is fun, this is enjoying, oh, this person also likes them, that's cool. And then it started to like reach a precipice where I had to pull back, and I actually went a while of not listening to them because it was almost like, if I keep going, am I gonna fall off the ledge? Am I possible to stay here? Is that okay? And I don't know how much of that is also I get obsessive, and so that doesn't help.
Like, I can imagine a lot of people who are into it, there's going to be a level of, maybe some obsessive personalities in there. But I don't necessarily know if that's all it is. I do wonder whether it's a cultural thing of like, if you like this band, this is how it all, it's sort of a rolling stone. You go with it, and you're like, okay, cool, I like this, and this is how it works. Because, bands like the Beatles and stuff had that as well, and, they'd have merch and everything. So it's not just obsessive internet-based K-pop stans, and by a long way. I mean, think about things like Elvis. You can go to Graceland and go to, it's basically a whole theme park, Dollywood, all these things. It's not K-pop stans that have the monopoly on this behaviour, and I don't necessarily think it's particularly bad, unless it's starting to put you into debt or affecting your mental health. I think you can be a stan of whatever you want. We're all good. Have fun. Enjoy it. Just don't go into debt.
Too late.
That's my message of the day.
Does that mean that I'm an education stan because I went into debt to try to get that?
Yeah, no, it is. That's exactly what happened.
Do it, kids. Get a PhD.
Stop encouraging them.
You too could be in debt on a podcast.
But I do wonder whether being, in our current society where we struggle with connection and things like that, we've talked about this before, how, people don't necessarily have the same physical community as they might have done in the past. I do wonder whether the stan culture, particularly for something like K-pop, where there is so much of it to be part of and so much community to become part of, that it draws people in a bit more, and that it scratches an itch for people if they are struggling with physical community in where they live, or for whatever reason, whether it's you go to work, you come home, you're exhausted, the easiest thing to do is go online because going out to a club is expensive, or bars and restaurants cost, all of that kind of stuff. I wonder if that the current economic crisis and downturn of living standards and stuff is adding to it. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, again, this
that
is probably...
went deep. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
This is probably a conversation for another time, but I always hold a little bit of a quirked eyebrow, I would say, when certain people, particularly sociologists and anthropologists, talk in a very similar way about some things being fulfilled because of a loss of something,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's hard to know the chicken and the egg.
Yeah, that's fair. That makes sense.
And this is something that, I mean, I personally don't have the research for, but I don't think they do either, of, if you are somebody who is, say, an LGBT kid, and you would get kicked out of your home for being out, and so you find your found family through enjoyment of certain activities, and you end up finding your community, is that a loss of your physical community, of your original community, or was that their loss? Do you know what I mean? Like, I think there is a certain amount of some people choosing to leave that because there are other options, because it is actually healthier and better sometimes to leave those environments. And so I think sometimes the original physical, communities of this kind of rural pastiche of everyone's together in this lovely village is often a very, like, overly nicely painted picture that isn't inherently true.
I was more thinking about, like, inner city youth clubs.
Yeah.
And things like that. So from my point of view of somebody who grew up in, not rural, a town, when I was a kid, there were lots and lots of clubs and stuff we could go to that would have been free. Like, I went to a comics and manga club at the library, and that was in a physical space because that was there, but that just no longer exists.
Well, but so I think also the other thing is those things do exist for youth. So where is that for the 30-year-old? Are you going to show
exactly,
up to the 15-year-old basketball session? No, of course not. But there's not an equivalent of that for the people in their 20s and their 30s. Yeah. But the assumption is that you would have already made your friends. But for people who have, say, been kicked out of their original homeland, who need to move for other reasons or have moved, there isn't that replacement, and that replacement is a knowledge of same shared enjoyment, but often those shared enjoyments come with the understanding that there is also shared values. And again, this is what we see with the K-pop stans, is the fact that they were mobilizing so much against Donald Trump shows that they all shared a similar value of fuck that guy.
Yeah. And once again, Vivian says what I'm trying to say, but in much better words. And this is why you have a PhD.
Well, I think maybe that would be a saved bonus episode of Vivian goes off about neo-tribes and how much she hates that fucking thing.
And I would just sit here and go, yes, please teach me. Yes.
Subcultures in neo-tribes, I'll just have a whole rant about those in a different thing. That I'll save that for the patrons. You can strap in for that. So if you want to pay £5 a month for that enjoyment.
I think that's a good place to stop. I feel like we've covered everything, and now we've got to plug in the Patreon. Excellent. Well done, us. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned something. I feel like Vivian, you always manage to, like I said, explain my thoughts in a much more concise and well thought out manner.
That's why I'm in debt, just to help you out.
I feel like I'm going to go and listen to some more K-pop now. I feel like I'm into it.
I'll send you some links.
Muchly. Because I'm that person who's like, if you listen to my my playlists or anything ever, you'll be like, this is very strange. Why have we gone from like Bellowhead to, like heavy metal back to ABBA and then some like Euro trash? That's my music taste. It's all over the shop. So.
Tom always jokes around about how I have two moods. And I swing between those wildly. So I'm either listening to really, really depressing, like, folky acoustic music, or I am listening to upbeat, happy ass, like, bubblegum pop that means nothing. And it is one or the other.
So I very distinctly, just to close off the show, remember a friend of mine from university standing in the kitchen with me as, like, one of my playlists is going. And he's just there kind of trying to grasp what on earth he's listening to. Because he would describe himself as a metalhead. He likes metal of all kinds. And he just stood there and went, it's quirky. You like music that is quirky. It doesn't matter what genre it is, as long as it's quirky. And I'm like, thank you for manic pixie dream girling me. I really appreciate that. But you're not wrong.
I was about to say, you're going to sit there and be like, I'm so quirky.
I'm so quirky. Thank you. Thanks.
I'm not like other non-binaries, thank you. I'm quirky.
Yeah. I'm the quirky non-binary, as if we aren't all like that,
Do NBs have the same, like, I'm not like other girls?
Probably.
I'm not like the other NBs. Thank you very much.
There's probably one, isn't there?
Oh, wait,
no, I know. It's Jeffree Star. This was fun. I enjoyed this. I feel like we came up with so many other episode ideas during that. Maybe we need to do a season that's just music. Because we deep dive into music when we talk about it, and I'd be really interested to do that. But also, I think we'd get bored really quickly.
Probably. We'll do one or two every season.
Yeah. We'll just spread it out.
If you have any suggestions for these music ones that we can do, you can hop on over to our Patreon, where there's a link to Discord. You can also just throw it in the Patreon somewhere, on an episode, shove it somewhere. I'll see it.
There are comments now on Spotify. I think you could, and you can review on Apple. So you can, if you put a review and then you put it in the review, what you'd like to hear, we will see it, which is great.
Yeah. So go throw it somewhere. Preferably on Patreon, because that means that you're a member of the Patreon.
I feel like I have to apologize to several members of the Patreon who I know categorically are big into their metal music, who will be sat there like wringing their hands like, what are you talking about, you know nothing, when I called Kiss metal. But like but yeah, this has been great fun. I think we should sign off and leave people wanting more.
Okay,
bye guys, we will see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Remember to like, review and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast, and do give it a share. Tell your friends, family and fellow fans and get the word out. You can follow us on social media, links in the show notes, as are some links to further reading. Who doesn't like a reading list? We are nerds after all. Music for this episode was Nowhere Land by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons Attribute 3.0. This episode was produced by Vivian Asimos and Holly Swinyard.